Okay, so in the last lecture, you got a brief overview over the different insert methods we have and how they work. I also briefly want to mention here that there are some other ways of inserting. One important alternative can be seen in the update module, because there we'll have an option to either update a document or insert it if it doesn't exist yet. But this is it from the insert method world for now. Now, the more interesting part is now what you can do with these insert methods. And there you can actually define or specify some additional information. Let's say we have a hobbies collection where we keep track of all the hobbies people could possibly have. And we insert many hobbies here. Now, each hobby is a document with the name of the hobby, like sports. And we can have multiple such names. Cooking, and then here also cars. Obviously, I could hit enter now and it would work. Now, I did mention that we get this auto-generated ID, right? Often you want to use that ID, but it also is the case that you want to use your own ID. Maybe because the data is fetched from some other database where you already had an ID, or maybe because you need a shorter ID. Here, for example, we could say the name of the sport also makes up for a great ID. So we could have _ID sports here, because we know that this will be unique. We will not have sports twice in this collection. So we can absolutely use sports as an ID here. And the same here for cooking. We can, of course, also use cooking. And I just name it all lowercase. You could absolutely use a capital C in there that would be accepted. So this is not required to be lowercase. But I'll use it like this. And the same for my last document, for the cars. I'll set _ID to cars. Now, important, it has to be _ID. Just ID will not work. It has to be _ID. If I now hit enter, you see these were the inserted IDs. And indeed, when we look into the database, we'll see no other ID, so no object ID. And this is perfectly fine. And this is not bad to do. Absolutely not. Bring your own IDs if you have them. So now I got these 3 entries in there, and I got my own ID. Now let's say I repeat that operation. So I add more hobbies. I add, let's say, yoga here. And then, let's leave the middle one untouched. I also add, let's say, hiking here. Now, the middle one, cooking, is untouched, because let's say the process where we add this, maybe it's user-added data, doesn't guarantee that we check whether this item exists in the database before. So I try to enter data with an ID that already exists in the database. What happens if I now hit enter? Well, if I do this, I get an error. Now let's see what we got. I get an error, a write error at item 1. Arrays start with index 0, so it tells us that the element at index 0, the first element, succeeded, but at index 1, so the second element in the array, it failed. So we failed in that bulk operation, and it gives us some more information. It tells us, again, where it failed, and that it failed because of a duplicate key error collection. It could have also failed due to a different error. Maybe our server went down during our operation. That could have been a thing. Now here it failed due to duplicate key problems. It also tells us the ID, cooking, so it gives us the exact document on which it failed. So this is of course helpful. But you also see here that one element was inserted. And indeed, if I reach out to my hobbies and I find them all and pretty print them, you see sports was added, cooking was added, cars was added. That was my first write. But in the last write, where I got the error, yoga, which was the first document, was added to the collection. So it failed after this element. Now, this is the default behavior of MongoDB. And this is called an ordered insert. An ordered insert simply means that every element you insert is processed standalone, but if one fails, it cancels the entire insert operation, but it does not roll back the elements it already inserted. That's important. But it cancels the operation and does not continue with the next document, which, as we know, would have succeeded. So, this is the default behavior. Often, you want that behavior. Sometimes you don't. And for these cases, you can override the behavior. Now, if I repeat that same operation, it will again fail, but now already on the first document because yoga was inserted in the last step. Now it will of course fail because now it's already in the database. So how can I change this behavior? Well, we can pass a second argument separated with a comma to insert many. That argument is a document, and this is now not a document that will get inserted. Instead, it is a document that configures this operation. And here we can set some options, and the option that helps us in this case here is the ordered option. The ordered option allows us to specify whether MongoDB should perform an ordered insert, which is the default. You can set this to true, but that is redundant because that is the default setting. So now it will behave in exactly the way we saw it before. But we can also set this to false, and now it will not be an ordered insert. Now if I now hit enter, I still get that error, but you see I now get a list of all the right errors, yoga and cooking, which already tells us that it continued after failing on yoga. And we also see that one element was inserted, and that has to be hiking since we tried to insert 3 and 2 of them failed. And indeed, if I now look into my database with find pretty, we see hiking in there. So by setting ordered to false here, we change the default behavior. And it is up to you what you require or what you want in your application. Be aware that it will never roll back the entire operation if something failed. That is something I'll cover towards the end of the course in the transactions module, because we'll need some additional knowledge to work with such transactions. A rollback will not happen here, but you can control whether it continues with the other documents and tries to insert everything which is fine, or if it does not. And being able to set this is very useful, because you might have cases where you can't really control whether the data you're trying to insert already is in the database. And then an unordered insert with ordered false can be your solution, because you don't care about any documents that fail. They already are in the database. That's fine for you. And you can add everything which is not in there yet. So this is how you can use ordered and unordered inserts to fine-tune the way documents get inserted to your needs.